everyone, welcome to the SBK Betting Podcast, the first in the month of October, as we get to the tail end of the flat turf season, and we're closing out in style. Every weekend we seem to have great Group 1 action, and this weekend we'll be previewing the Sun Chariot Stakes at Newmarket. There's some very competitive racing throughout the country, but before we do that, we have to reflect on last weekend. We thought that it was going to be pretty special. We knew we had a lot to look forward to, and it wasn't just the racing. We also had the fabulous European victory in the Ryder Cup as well, and it was just one of those weekends to remember. And I think that Tom, who joins us as always, along with Ross, but Tom especially would have enjoyed Sunday, as on this podcast this time last week, he tipped up Ace Impact to win the Arc, and he did so. And TC, you tipped him up at 100 to 30, but he won like a good thing. Comparisons to the likes of Dancing Brave, the way that he just rattled down the centre of the track. We know that this is a very, very smart 3-year-old. He's clearly the best Europe has to offer. How impressed were you with him, and how much do you hope that he might be seen maybe seen again this year and potentially even next year?
Yeah, I certainly enjoyed Sunday a lot more than Saturday with the whole Liverpool palaver and my UK tips crashing and burning. But Ace Impact was definitely the highlight of Sunday. Yeah, I was taken by the performance, but I was kind of expecting it. And I don't mean that to sound in an arrogant way because I tipped him, but I just don't think it was a very good race. So I was kind of expecting him to come to the fore anyway. Look, he was good, but he was given a good ride. He was right down the outside, which is kind of where you want to be. Everything fell into place for him. And although the likes of Westover ran well, I suppose the Japanese horse ran well as well. He was quite clearly the horse to beat, and he proved that on the day. I loved the actual highlight for me, aside from obviously backing him, was the celebration from Jean-Claude Rouget doing all this in the crowd. You love to see it for the veteran trainer. But yeah, look, it was a good performance. Where they go next, we'll see. I saw a few things on Twitter saying they could retire him, which would be an absolute shambles. At least give him a couple more runs. Come on, we want to see these potential top quality horses stay in training. Just off camera before we start this pod, you mentioned that he could face Equinox. If that happens, I'm very much team Equinox, especially if it happens in Japan. I can't see him being beaten. But look, the headlines going towards the race, if they do match up against each other, will be phenomenal, and it will get a bit of hype about the sport again.
Yeah, I think it's frustrating in a way, because the Equinox team probably never even considered the Prix de Triomphe, because they just assumed the ground would be on the testing side. And what we saw was the likes of Rosalian getting a new course record in the Jean-Luc Lagardère. The ground was definitely on the quick side, too quick for my selection, Hookham, who ran a brave race not enjoying the ground. And it really threw up the horses that favoured that speed test. And Equinox would have been really interesting if he was in that field. You would have thought, if he was owned by one of the classic breeding operations, he'd be straight into stud. And yes, the owners do have a real big commercial obligation to get him to stud, but they seem quite game on. And I know that they've dismissed the Breeders' Cup, but the Japan Cup, I think, has been mooted. Whether that's sort of been glamorized a little bit because we're trying to push it or not, I don't know. But I feel like they'd be keen to keep proving him now. He's done it in Europe, but internationally as well. And they just feel like the horse is probably, he's still hasn't even reached his peak yet. Ross, what do you reckon? Do you think we'll see him, or do you imagine that they're going to close up shop with this unbeaten son of Cracksman?
I hope we see him. You just understand that we've heard Westover now as met with injury, as being retired. They are just such a fragile beast, and the lure of the financial rewards of sending an unbeaten Arc winner to stud is understandable. But I read the same sort of stuff as you. It does appear that they aren't entirely sold on stopping just yet. And as TC said, we do desperately need these clashes and big battles, especially now flat racing in particular has become a far more global sort of entity. It can only be for the good of the sport, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, I'm trying to find what I've read, and I think Champion Stakes and the Japan Cup will be considered. Definitely not the Breeders' Cup. Difficult to know. But as you say, touching on that, Westover, very sad to hear that he has been retired. He had an injury in the Prix de Triomphe. I thought he would have run a cracking race in the Breeders' Cup turf, but not to be. But that was the arc. Ace Impact, a very special winner, despite maybe not being the strongest renewal of the race. Also, from this podcast last week, I tipped up Vandeek, who I thought was a good thing. He went off at 5-4. I think at the time he was 9-4, so he did come in for support, but he was mightily impressive. He put that field to bed. Any opinions that River Tiber was going to be able to reverse the form was absolutely mad thoughts, but nice to show that again, that that horse clearly just not good enough. Vandeek is just improving, and I think he's still not clearly the finished article. He doesn't really know how to do it properly yet, but we'll see what happens next year. I think he'll stay sprinting. And I actually asked Ed Christopher when I saw him this week, will we see him again? He said he's been put away for the season. So no Dewhurst match up with City of Troy. That would have been fun, but I just can't imagine seeing him running over further than 6 furlongs. But you imagine they might be tempted. But that is Vandeek, a very exciting horse for going into next year. Ace Impact, of course. Let's see what will happen. But we're kind of sort of coming to this end point of the season where horses are either thriving at this stage or they're just kind of reaching the sort of boiling point. And that's what my feelings are around the Sun Chariot Stakes, this Group 1 for fillies and mares. It's a hope for Frankie Dettori to get his 500th winner at Newmarket on his final opportunities. And he will be partnering up with a filly that's been pretty important to him for the last few seasons. That's Inspiral. And she's currently around even money. And then we've got a French runner in Mqse De Sevigne. I don't know if I've pronounced that right. Ross might be able to confirm for me. Meditates in here as well. Heredia off the back of a good couple of successes. Coppice returns only 8 days after her win last time. Random Harvest as well has been a great servant for Safi Osborne. But there's a field of 8. Now, Ross, you know horses better than anyone. My thinking is that Inspiral, she seems to find a time to win at the middle of the year, and then she sort of sulks a little bit. And this time last year, we saw exactly the same thing. She won in Deauville, and then she went to Ascot, and she just wasn't really herself. Why should she turn up this time in the Sun Chariot? Yes, it's a lesser race than the QE2, but I just worry about her. I just can't trust her to be as good as she always seems to be in the middle of the summer.
Yeah, I think that's a fair comment, but it was pretty autumnal weather last year, and you're having a nice batch of weather over in the UK at the moment, and the sun is still shining, the ground is still good. Fillies, mares in particular, can be affected by changing season, changing weather. And if this summer is sort of weather is just holding on a bit longer, I think that does give her a bit of a chance. I just think she got bogged down in the mud last year, and she did the same in the Sussex at Goodwood. Really, I think I took the view, and I completely understand she's not a horse you could be ever overly confident about, I don't think, but she's a fairly long way clear of these on ratings, apart from the French filly, who I believe is Mqse De Sevigne. But I just cannot see a drop back to a mile on this track, on quick ground, suiting a French filly. So if you put a line through her, Inspiral is some way clear, and she does arrive here, unlike a lot of them, fairly fresh with just three runs. You could well be on something with the time of year, but I just think this better weather and better ground is just going to swing it in her favour. So I think she's very, very hard to get away from. If you wanted to take the view that she was too risky at even money, and personally I think she'll be odds on the day, I thought Meditate has been disappointing this year, considering what she does as a 2-year-old and the physique she had. You thought she was going to step up into a better 3-year-old. She's been disappointing. But last time at Leopardstown, she was much, much better in the Matron Stakes. She got caught in a pocket and caught on heels and had to switch out when the winning was done. Tahira had gone. But she really quickened up smartly down the outside and flew home quite late on. I think this better ground suits her. I think this track can suit her. She's got some decent form there already as a juvenile. Stiff finish. Just think she's better than she's shown, and in a race where perhaps the each way angle is the way to go, she was the one for me each way. But I think Inspiral's very hard to get away from as a winner.
Yeah, gets a weight allowance as well, doesn't she? Say it again, the French name, so that I make sure that
Mqse De Sevigne.
Mqse De Sevigne, which is obviously the Marquess of some sort of grand place in France. But I completely agree with you with her. She's clearly thrived over a trip further, 10 furlongs plus. Although she did win over a mile during the summer, but that just sort of, that was the slight concern. And it is good ground, and it feels like it is drying out. It's been pretty dry over the last week up in Newmarket. But interesting sort of opinions around Inspiral. She's clearly, Tom, the best filly in the race. On ratings anyway, she is. She's back in against the fillies, and she's been holding her own against the colts throughout the last couple of seasons. So you would have to believe that coming back into this grade, it's her race to lose. I don't know. I'm just not entirely certain. And a betting race, I'm agreeing with Ross that there's a bit of each way value to be had with the dead 8 in here.
Yeah, I don't think that angle's bad at all. I mean, with the 8 runners, obviously you got some good prices aside from Inspiral, who's gonna definitely be odds on. I completely agree with Ross about that. Even money right now seems a very fair price to me, and on that basis, I have to be with her. Now, every single time we've previewed a race since her 2-year-old season that involves Inspiral, I say exactly the same thing, which is I never trust her. She's super inconsistent. I can't get her right. However, surely this is going to be the day for her. I mean, she is by far the best, as you've already touched on. The ground is currently listed as good. It's quick at Newmarket. It's on the firm side of good. And the weather for the rest of this week, obviously we're filming this Thursday morning, is just sun and 20 odd degrees, which is ridiculous for October, but it's true. So it's just going to get quicker and quicker. That's going to help Inspiral. The French filly needs soft ground, in my opinion, and probably further. Meditate was the other option in the race, so I did very much copy Ross's notes for this year's Sun Chariot. But again, I just can't really trust her at the moment. She needs to improve. Based on last year's form, huge player, but we just haven't seen the best of her this term. So given that Inspiral was 1 from 1 on the Rolling Mile, 4 from 5 on good to firm ground, has run to a mark higher than any of the last 10 winners of the Sun Chariot, so quite clearly has the class angle as well. I think even money, which represents a 50% chance of winning, is very fair. I think she's got a better chance than 50% of winning this race, so I have to tip up Inspiral.
Okay, well, fair enough. I just feel like there's more value to be had, and just let's see. She could be far too good, and if you're in that camp, fine. Is actually probably quite good value. But if you just feel something, and I do think they're big inflated prices about horses that coming into this in great order, and we've seen that, and they just feel a little bit more reliable. I'm quite surprised to see Coppice turning around so quickly. 8 days ago, she won over course and distance. Yes, it was just a listed race, but it was back to her best. Frankie gave her quite a pretty cute ride. But they said afterwards that she's going straight to America. That's where she's going to she's going to restart her career with a new trainer, whoever it's going to be, but for Juddmonte. So she's obviously come out of it really well for them to want to just throw her back in a Group 1. So I take that as a bit of a confidence boost from the John and Thady Gosden team. She's around 14 to 1. We know that she acts well on the track. She's clearly thriving and in good form. She's had her excuses why she didn't run so well the last couple of times, and she's just a better price. I think it's definitely an each way selection for me in this race, but Coppice I'm happy to throw in at 14 to 1. But for the guys, it is Inspiral and Meditate as well for Ross at an each way price in the Group 1 Sun Chariot on Saturday. But that is probably not as competitive as some of the racing that we'll find at Ascot. Some really good big field races, and the Challenge Cup at 3:35 is one that you really want to get stuck into. It's a little bit similar to last week, which we saw the Cambridgeshire, where we had 35 runners, and I was just slightly heartbroken to see Greek Order just fail. But we've got another kind of opportunity to get stuck into a big race, and SBK has a Same Race Acca in this, a bit similar to the football bet builder. You can have numerous selections from one race put into one bet. So with that in mind, I know that Ross and TC have some thoughts on this. Maybe TC, I'll come to you first. How do you view the Challenge Cup from a Same Race Acca perspective?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the Challenge Cup. It's a highly competitive handicap, isn't it? Featuring lots of Ascot specialists and stalwarts. It's a good race for the Same Race Acca as well. If you like your football bet builders, this is the perfect opportunity to do just that in horse racing. My Same Race Acca is just going to involve two horses, both to place, both to finish in the first three, but you could also select top four for both of these horses as well. The first is Fresh, two-time course and distance winner at Ascot over this trip. Finished third in this race 2 years ago. Has to be included, in my opinion, now that he's stepping back up to his ideal trip after a good run at the Curragh. And the other horse I'd put in, again, top three or top four in this race, is a horse called Atrium, who's dropped back down in distance after running over a mile for the good portion of his career. He's off a nice mark of 96 now, solid course form as well at Ascot. And although he is generally a miler, the way he goes through his races, he hasn't got that much natural early speed. I think that will definitely help over this stiff track. You know, when we're talking about the straight track at Ascot, we're always talking about horses that have got loads of stamina in their arsenal. So Atrium is one that could be plugging on for a place late in the race.
Okay, nice. Great. It's a great incentive, isn't it? The Same Race Acca. It's good fun, especially if you're used to like the football bet builders. And it's really good for a race like the Challenge Cup. Ross, do you enjoy it? What have you found something in here that you can add to TC's ideas?
Well, add to TC's in some ways. I thought Fresh was definitely a standout here to place. I think he's been unfortunate this year. I mean, tried him at 6 furlongs. That's clearly not his bag. And you know, at Ascot, I thought he was just unlucky. He was drawn on the wrong side of the track, and that pretty much put pay to that from the start. You know, he was a winner off 102 this time last year. He's now down to 99. I don't see there's any sign that the ability's not still there. So I thought he had to be on the list to hit the place. And then the other one was the Stuart Williams train Quinel, who's just been fantastic this year, winning 7 out of 8 from a starting mark of 59. He's now up to 102. I mean, logic would tell you that at some point he's got to hit his ceiling, that he's going to be too high in the handicap. But I think you could have looked at any one of those singular wins this year and sort of thought that he was probably going to have to find improvement to win again. And he just keeps on finding that improvement. Luke Catton gets on great with him. I think he's a bit of a price because I think the market will sort of take the view that he's not going to be up to this level, but he's just in a fine vein of form, and I think you've just got to keep following him until he shows that he has reached his ceiling. So for me, it was Fresh and Quinol, same as TC, both to hit the first 3.
Okay, yeah, I would throw Dark Trooper in there as well. He's a similar vein, isn't he, Quinol? And Quinol was beaten by Dark Trooper. And the same way, he's just been on this bit of a roll. Probably not as high profile as Quinol, but he's a grand old sort, and he's just sort of thriving. And Ed Walker's happy to keep him moving, keep him on a roll. So that's some Same Race Acca ideas for you for the Challenge Cup at Ascot, 3:35 on Saturday. As always, we've got naps and next best time. So with TC with the winning ARC selection, we'll start with you first.
Thank you. Yes, my nap's going to come in the opening 7 furlong novice event at Redcar, the 140, and there's a horse called Mqse. Now, this 2-year-old colt is by a precocious sire, Soldier's Call. He was an excellent juvenile when he raced with David O'Mara, winning numerous events, including the Windsor Castle and the Flying Childers. He was just a very good 2-year-old, and most of his progeny, I expect, are going to be very good 2-year-olds as well. Now, Mqse's had 1 start so far this season. It came at Newcastle just 11 days ago, but he was sent off at 5-4. Now, when you get an Ed Bethell first-time starter sent off at 5-4, you have to pay note because the trainer isn't known for winning first time up with his horses. Unfortunately, the chance for Mqse that day went within about a stride because he missed it by 2 lengths. Then he veered drastically to the right, showing lots of inexperience. From that moment onwards, he was very professional throughout the race, which gives me hope that he's ready to make his mark at the second time of asking. He raced on the wrong side of the track, but then switched to the far left, where the market protagonists were racing and then featured at the end of the race as well. And he stayed on nicely under hands and heels riding, nowhere near maximum urgings to try and win the race, but just to teach him something. And he finished a good 4th. I think that he's got a great chance in this opener. On Saturday, Ed Bethell also had another runner in the declarations called Gressington, who won first time up and actually would have been my selection if he was in here and Mqse wasn't. But Bethell decided to run Mqse by himself, and I think that's a key for this race, the 140 at Redcar. And then the next best is going to be a horse called Luaze in the 4:55 at Wolverhampton. It's Division 2, of a mile and a half, 0 to 55 handicap. So it's not the most glamorous, but I am on Sky Sports on Saturday, so I've looked at this Wolverhampton card in detail. The race is full of not very talented horses, seasoned handicappers, veterans who just haven't been breaking through at this level after numerous attempts. But Loazé is the one horse in the field who's unexposed. She had 3 runs in novice events over inadequate trips, much shorter than this. Then they stepped her into a handicap last time off a basement mark of 51, and she was super eye-catching in finishing third. The race was dominated by 2 horses throughout the whole event. The Pug was one of them. He's posted good form since. Those 2 drew clear. Loazé stayed on under hands and heels for third. Off the same mark of 51, I think she's virtually a cinch in the 4:55 at Wolverhampton.
Yeah, completely unexposed, isn't she? That Wolverhampton card, and I'm trying to work out very quickly how many races there are on at Wolverhampton, but I assume that's 9. So good luck to you. Good luck to you, TC. There is it's come to that point of the season where it's just all weather racing has become bumper. So enjoy that on Sky Sports. That's where you can watch TC on Saturday night. Ross, what do you like this weekend?
I found it hard going this week, Jess. I had a few that were on my radar that didn't get declared. But in the 3 o'clock at Ascot, the old favourite, Comanche Falls. This horse done really well over the last couple of seasons. He's just so consistent at this level and handicap level. I think you'll love this track. I mean, virtually the only time he travels in his comfort zone is when he's cantering down to the start. He's a painful watch at times because he's under the pump quite early on, but he loves a pace that collapses in front of him. Ascot, that tends to happen time and time again. I think there'll be strong pace here because there's a number of horses dropping back from 7 furlongs, so they're going to want a truly run race. And I just think at this level, this is his bag, this is his track. He's got his ground. The only time he's really disappointed this year was on soft, sticky ground. So Comanche Falls is the nap in the 3 o'clock. And then I am jumping across to the jumps, starting to get there now. And the 5:10 at Fontwell, the Joe Tizard trained Tamaris, showed huge improvement for a Windop last time. Won by 10 lengths. It could have been 20. Was a very comfortable winner. Jumped proficiently, jumped nicely round a small track at Plumpton. Only got a £5 rise for that, which I thought looked very fair. This doesn't look at any sort of deeper race at all. Has decent course form previously and has the benefit of race fitness against a few of these. So I thought Tamaris in the 5:10 at Fontwell was a decent next best bet.
That's what we like to hear. He has not given up on you jumps fans. He is still alive and kicking for the jumps lovers, and we are very, very close to jump season properly kicking off. When's Chepstow next? Is it next week? Week after? Yeah. So we've got plenty to look forward to. So I reckon we'll be previewing some jumps racing soon. Just watch out, TC. I know you're already doing that for Sunday. He loves it. We love it. Right, so for me, I'm going to keep it quite simple. I've been really looking forward to seeing Zulu Chief coming back out. He's running in the Tassels October Auction Stakes, the sales race at Newmarket on Saturday. He was a late non-runner at Doncaster, I think it was, on account of the ground, which got too soft. It is good ground. They'll hope that it'll be drying out every second, and as we just discussed with Sun Chariot, it looks like it is. I was quite surprised to see that he's even money. It is a short price for a horse that at one stage of his career, early on in the year, was nothing better than 125 to 1. But last time he absolutely bolted up at York, winning the Nursery, hard held, beating Starlust, who's gone and won the Serenia Stakes since. Was tried in the Group 1 last week, and I don't think was completely disgraced as well in the Middle Park. So that's really good form. I think great horse for Heather Main and for Gina Mangan. I just really hope that this horse can continue to shine in a big race for a big prize in what I don't think is massively competitive, to be honest. Some very exposed horses in there, in amongst some horses that haven't really done a huge amount at all. So I think that is a good thing in Zulu Chief in the 205 at Newmarket. And then my next best is in the first race, the 130. Totnes goes in the Fillies handicap over 10 furlongs. Notable that it's back into fillies company. She's a filly that has been doing very well against the opposite sex, including finishing second to Balance Play last time out at Newbury on heavy ground. Now, she might want it slightly softer, so I've got contrasting needs this weekend in terms of ground. But I think she was beaten by a very good horse in Balance Play, who goes off to the Old Rowley Cup with a massive, massive chance. She also beat a horse called Mayfair Gold, who franked the form yesterday at Kempton. She went up £1 for finishing second to Balance Play, which I think is fair enough. She's very likeable. She's very consistent. She's on the upgrade, and she's 10-1 in against some horses that I don't really think have got as good form as she does. So she's my next best in the 1:30 at Newmarket. So very keen on those two selections, which is unlike me because I'm normally a little bit tetchy. But looking forward to them. And we'll join Ross and TCs for their selections as well. So that's it. And if you like all those selections, you can get £30 in free bets if you're a new SBK user when you sign up and bet £10 for the first time. So make the most of that for this weekend. Don't forget to subscribe to whichever podcast channel you listen to. We're also on YouTube, and we will see you next week.